All right, guys, welcome to SaxSQL training. My name is Ferry, and in today's video, we're going to have a look at Grok 3, Elon Musk's newly released AI model, which allegedly, or at least to the community, is taking the world by storm. So what does this mean actually? Maybe you've already got lost in the world of AI. A lot of models have been released. Maybe in the recent weeks you have heard about OpenAI releasing a variety of different versions of their model. And also, of course, the Chinese catching up with DeepSeek R1. And if that is not enough, once DeepSeek R1 was released, and since it was open source, a lot of American tech companies and AI organizations actually used that knowledge to improve or build their new models on top of it. One of the most spoken about ones in the last 2 weeks is Grok 3. And the reason why this model is standing out, according to a lot of people in the industry, is because of its thinking capabilities. Now, I'm not going to technically break down what that exactly means, then it will become a very technical computer sciencey video, and I want to keep these kind of videos light for a broader audience. So instead of that, I'm going to test its capability by asking it to build one of the games that I used to play in my life, and that is called International Draughts. International Draughts you might know as checkers when you're from the United States. The rules are slightly different, but the best comparison is a chessboard with 100 different squares and flat round pieces, and the goal of the game is to either conquer or lock the pieces in such a way that the opponent has no legal moves left, and then you win the game. Now, it's a less well-known version compared to, of course, the other major mind sport, chess, where we just had a new world champion, Gukesh from India, who was actually able to conquer the world title by beating Ding Liren after Magnus Carlsen from Norway decided not to defend his title. In the draughts world, we have a newly celebrated world champion as well. It's my fellow countryman Jan Groenendijk, only 26 years old, who was able to beat the grandmaster from the Ukraine, Yuri Anikeyev. And Yuri Anikeyev technically raised to prominence by winning the world title in the round tournament 2 years ago in the Caribbean, to be more specifically on Curacao. Now, of course, this will not be a draft video, but we will ask Grok 3 to build international drafts with an interface that is recognizable for actual drafts players. Now, of course, we can't avoid it to become a bit technical. I have a background in computer science, and I have taught a variety of courses that lean towards databases, data science, and of course different kinds of programming paradigms as well. So I will be able to give a little bit of feedback of what you see on the screen, but it is not necessary to completely understand what is going on. Now, Grok 3 is just like ChatGPT, technically a large language model, what is able to take in a prompt as input, written text, or also a picture or other different kinds of files, and based on the reasoning of Grok 3, it is able to establish an output, including code or solutions to mathematical problems, essays, and different other kinds of for humans useful output. All right, so just to give you a little bit of context, as you can see on the screen, I have X, the recently, or at least a few years back, acquired platform formerly known as Twitter by Elon Musk. And one of the recent tweets of Elon Musk, you either love him or hate him. I will stay neutral in this respect. I think Elon is a brilliant thinker and did really great things, but that doesn't hold true necessarily for his political involvement. That is what I will say about it for now. He says in this tweet, for a short time, Grok 3 is available for free to all, which is quite amazing. He is allowing the general audience to technically test out and also in the background train the Grok 3 AI model, which is something called reinforcement learning. Technically, by testing it out in reality by average users, Grok 3 is able to improve itself. It used to be behind a paywall. You need to be a subscriber to the X platform, which is around $8 per month, which I decided not to do. So I am going to use the free available Grok 3 beta version via my X profile on SaxSQL training, as you can see down here. So I'm not a paid member. I don't have the blue tick on X, but we will definitely be able to get ahead with Grok 3 and see what it is able to do in designing creating international drafts. Now, in the second part of this video, I'm going to explain a little bit about what international drafts is, what it personally has to do with me, a little bit of background information so you have an idea what this mind sports look like, and then we're going to dive into what Grok 3 is able to come up with in terms of international drafts. Okay, before we continue, just a little bit of background about Grok 3 and the whole hype. One of the major questions, of course, within the field of artificial intelligence is that, especially when you look at it from a distance, a lot of different companies are releasing different models all the time. So what makes this special? Now, of course, the different models get better and better, but what does that even mean? It technically means that it is able to reason in depth and shows the way it thinks by giving you the breakdown of the steps of its reasoning. It also is able to learn from its own mistakes, not only by given feedback by the end user, which is called human feedback, but also by technically able to reason out the suitability of its own answers. It's like the little voice in your head being able to say, well, this is not a good idea, maybe we should do it differently, maybe we have 2 or 3 different approaches, and the AI is able to do this by itself. So that's why memes like this show up. You see Grok as the almost like the new robot in a new movie that seems to come out, and a couple of little ones in the front, Claude, OpenAI, Gemini, and even the Chinese DeepSeek, which was revered just 2 to 3 weeks ago, which is quite amazing. So is this accurate? Is Grok the new hero? In order to actually make sense of all of this, you need to know what capabilities the current AI models actually have. Now, one of the things that stands out in terms of the new model is the move from an AI that is pure based on input processing output, which means you write a text prompt, and the text prompt is being analyzed as a piece of text, and then the AI, the old generation AI, was technically able to predict with a very difficult mathematical algorithm based on probabilities to find out which words were the most common and most likely to be followed in a certain sentence structure. So what that meant is that it's technically almost like a language game based on the data set it had. So that's why, for example, writing essays was one of these abilities that it could do really well, because it is based on language analysis. Now, we moved from language analysis a little bit more to logical and analytical reasoning, and that is also where Grok 3 comes in. This is the official blog, or what is called, I think it's almost like a white paper about Grok 3. Now, it's not that interesting to go through it all the way, but one of the things that is important to realize is that they are called reasoning models, which technically means that they can use reinforcement learning in a chain of thought process, which technically means that they are able to analyze their own thoughts, just like humans. So you can technically say, well, you need to solve a problem, and in your head you think about certain steps that need to be done, and then at that same time you will evaluate your own steps, and you weigh these steps in terms of what is more applicable or better for this kind of solution. So that is also what the new Grok 3 is able to do. And of course, based on that line of reasoning, you get insight in technically how the AI reasons, because it visually shows you these steps on the screen. Yeah. So here's an example. Here it thought for 4 seconds and it ponders on the prompt, what is the meaning of life? Yeah. Thinking for 1 second, and you see that it will technically discuss what different insights, maybe based on the body of work that humans or philosophers already have done. As you can see, it will discuss the different insights and eventually combine and reason on its own based on these resources to come to its own answer. Yep. A few statistics where you can see how Grok 3 performs against other models. There are quite a couple of benchmarks that are used to test the strength of these models. Of course, math and coding are used very often because these areas have verifiable solutions. You can actually say if a math problem solution is correct or not, and that is the same for coding. A coding problem either solves the problem or not based on the set requirements or specs. That is of course more difficult when you have more open questions or any kind of reasoning in the field of humanities or languages, because it's more based on opinions and value systems. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to just share the Grok environment within X, and then I will toggle to my Visual Studio Code, which is the IDE that I'm going to use to test the actual solution offered by Grok. So, long introduction, but I will see you on the other side, and let's see if Grok 3 can play drafts, or at least understand the game initially. Alright, see you on the other side, guys. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Ferry, your data expert. Welcome to SaxSQL.
All right, guys, and we are back on the other side. So what I will do is I am going to introduce the two environments I will be using for this part of the video. The first part being the actual Grok interface, so which I will load right now. You can access Grok yourself. You need a X account, formerly known as Twitter, and then you can see there's a tab called Grok here, which allows you to type prompts down here in two different modes, either deep search and think, based on the kind of question you want them to answer or the amount of resources you want to allocate to it. So one of the things that I'm going to do is toggle between this environment, and as you can see, I have already written down the script and the answers of Grok based on our international drafts game. All right, this environment will be used against this one. This is for people that are not familiar with programming. This is called an IDE. What you see here on the screen is an integrated development environment, or in plain English, a tool, a piece of software to write and run code. So we are going to use this environment and to test the output of Grok, see if the generated code from Grok meets the requirements. And again, the requirements are the ability to play international drafts on the computer. I'm going to explain it a little bit later on. One of the things that you will see down here is a lot of what looks like messages or even errors. As you can see, there's a few things going on here, and here you will see the code. There are a variety of tabs. I will discuss them as we go through the different outputs of Grok, because we do this gradually. So it is an evolving design. Grok will not spit out the right thing always at the first time. You need to sometimes give it feedback on the mistakes it makes, and then literally teach it how to solve the issues that the solution has. You don't need to understand this environment from a technical perspective. It's just used as a demo, nor will I go in depth on the actual code that was been generated, unless it is relevant to the narrative in layman's terms. All right, so let's return to Grok right here. And let's first, for the people that are not familiar, discuss what international drafts is. Now, everybody is, or I assume everybody is familiar with chess. The only technically resemblance with chess is the fact that we use a square size board with 100 squares as opposed to 64 on a chessboard, but the pieces and the game rules are extremely different. Also, for people that are familiar with checkers in the United States, even though the round flat pieces are similar to international drafts, the rules are very different. So let me use my own experience with drafts and a few examples to understand what this game is about. And we are back. Okay, guys, just a short introduction on the game of drafts, and I'm going to use my own website to do that, since it contains some information about my story in drafts and how I got involved in international drafts. Also, for people that are not familiar with this mind sport, to see what we're going to build in Grok 3. Of course, this is also a shameless plug for my own services. You can find my services, freelance services, in IT training, consultancy, and tutoring at SaxSQL.com, SaxSQL, Saxophone, structured query language, which is a database retrieval language. It's just a funny mix. I'm not going to break it down. You can visit my website and contact me if you're interested in any of my services. What I'm going to do instead is scroll to personal and use the section on international drafts. Oh, if we can go down here for the relevance of this video. I was introduced to drafts by my father in 1986 at Hussen Drafts Club. My father is a former vice Dutch champion in the juniors category in 1960 and 1963. He lost the tiebreak from a fellow competitor. My father passed away in 2019, and he was a strong player and a permanent member of the Hussen Drafts Club, one of the most consistent and strongest drafts clubs in the Netherlands, which also holds the strongest drafts competition in the world. I became a strong player myself with most of my achievements dating back to the 1990s and the early 2000s. I decided to quit competitive drafts in 2014, and in 2017 I moved abroad away from the Netherlands, which further made it harder to play drafts physically. Of course, I'm active online, and you can find some of the links if you want to challenge me for a game. So the goal is not to talk about myself, the goal is to see what drafts is all about. Well, first of all, the link that I want to use is this one. This leads to an online database of drafts games. It's called Toernooibase. If we go there, then you will see that you have the ability to browse a large database of drafts players, including myself, as you can see, and you can replay the games of past tournaments, analyze them, chat with fellow drafts players about the technical aspect of the game. Maybe you can find better solutions that weren't found during matches you've played. Let me just click on a random list of tournaments here. These are all the different tournaments that I competed in. Just to give you an idea of what the game looks like, let me click on this one, Berlin Open, in which tournament in Berlin that I participated in the year 2000. Let me click on this specific game that I played against the former world champion juniors, Oleg Cherniak from the Ukraine, who sadly passed away at a young age. Now you can see the board is 100 different squares. We have 20 pieces playing the white color and 20 pieces playing the black color. There is a set of rules that dictate that you take turns in playing moves, and the goal is to conquer each other's pieces or to completely block them, so there's no legal move left. In that case, that player will lose the game. The three possible results are a win for white, a win for black, which will result in 2-0 or 0-2, and a draw, which is the sharing of the points, which is 1-1. As you can see, this game ended in a draw between Oleg Cherniak and myself. So the actual notation refers to how the pieces move. So 32-28 means that this field 32, where the piece originated from, is the source field, and it moves to 28, which is the destination field. The move 17-21 means that black responds with taking the piece from field 17 and moves it to 21, which is legal. The rules are that capturing is mandatory. If you have a majority capture, you need to take it, and if a piece ends up at the opposite row, you need to technically promote it to what is called a king, and a king can move diagonally in every direction and can also capture pieces that are present on that diagonal, as long as you don't capture two pieces that are consecutive or adjacent to each other. Now, a few examples. In this case, white needs to mandatory capture the piece that is now in this field. So Cherniak can either choose taking this piece, moving it there, capturing this field, or taking this piece and moving it there. He chooses this one, and in this case you also see that I, using the black pieces, need to capture two pieces mandatory in a row. So from 18 to 27, from 27 to 38. And as you can see, the notation is 18 times 38, which means that every time you see a little X, it's a capture, and then when you see a dash, it's an actual move. Source field destination field. So this is a mandatory capture, another mandatory capture, and then when you scroll down to the end of the game, then you see in this final position, let's go here, you see this piece here that Cherniak positioned one move from the promotion line, as well as my piece here, one move from the promotion line. I play this one, and Cherniak promotes his piece to a king. The king can now move diagonally over multiple fields. I play this one, and you can see these two pieces are very far ahead, waiting to be promoted to two kings, and therefore Cherniak offered a draw, and this game ended in a draw. Okay, so this is technically the game of drafts. The question is, can we recreate this board with these rules with Grok without any programming languages? At least we try, and to see how far the AI understands the game of international drafts. All right, I will see you on the other side for our first attempt. Oh, hello there. Sorry for the interruption. We will go back to the video soon. But as you know, unscripted is usually the best time in your life. Also, don't forget, for my freelance services, training, tutoring, and teaching in computer science and mathematics, please visit my website www.SaxSQL.com, and I will see you soon in my virtual classroom. Okay, now let's get back to the video. All right, guys, and we are back. So now I'm going to toggle between Grok within X, and even though this is a bit heavy on my system because an AI environment open at the same time with an IDE for actual software development is a bit challenging for even a newer laptop, also because the recording software is open at the same time. Okay, so this will not be a technical venture, and that is the important thing to understand. The whole trend of modern day AI is moving towards more prompt-based engineering than actual technical engineering. And what it means is you should be able to write clear prompt, text-based prompts with clear instructions so the AI understands what you want. Of course, you need to provide feedback in order to specify certain mistakes that the AI makes. You need to fact check some of the output that the AI gives you. You cannot blindly follow the AI. So critical thinking remains an important skill, even with using these modern day tools. They will improve and become more reliable in the future, but there will never be a point where there is a 100% dependency on artificial intelligence. That is my personal opinion, and that is something that I have throughout my entire career in computer science always believed in. It's always the human that has the final say. All right, okay, so how does this work? The first thing you need to realize is that it's just a chat dialogue between you and Grok. That's what is happening here. If you have ever played with ChatGPT or any of the other tools, then you have probably noticed that most of these environments are just allowing you to type in a piece of text, a question, a task description, an assignment, in your own words, in all languages that you might speak. Most languages are supported by most AI models, so you can switch between English and Dutch, or you can start to write in Chinese. The AI will understand you. We, of course, are going to use English in this video, as that is the main language to convey information. Let's start with the first thing that I've done. So the first question is, okay, how do you write a prompt? Now, what I'm going to choose is, and that's by choice, I'm going to give very basic information in terms of what Grok 3 needs to make. What I do instead is I let Grok 3 do its own research online. It can access online resources and filter out the relevant information that it needs to learn about, in this case, international drafts. So you can see how I start. First thing I ask you to do is check out this URL of the rules of international drafts with a focus on the Wikipedia page of international drafts. And I just ask it simply to create a Python game for international drafts. So now, this will already pose a couple of challenges for Grok. The first thing is that Grok doesn't know what international drafts is, and if I give him one source, the Wikipedia page, it has to scan that external source first, filter out the correct information, and see what is needed in order for the AI to build this game in Python. For people that are not familiar with Python, Python is the main programming languages these days. In terms of versatility and application, it's the number one language in the world these days, followed by JavaScript and Java. I'm not going to go in depth about that any further, but so we will have a look at what I've done here. Now you can see I turned on this button, deep search, and you can see that the deep search will technically show an output in which it makes a step-based plan, an algorithm. It breaks down the steps to reason through this problem, and that's very interesting to see. You need to realize when you click this button that you technically say, okay, take your time and use quite a lot of resources to really understand the prompt here. Yeah. Now, you can see what it actually has done. It has, based on my prompt here, it says exploring the game, refining capture rules, specific part of the game, planning implementation, which is technically planning the stage for actually writing the code for international drafts, clarifying king captures, that's game logic. So it needs to understand how kings can capture pieces, because it's different per drafts implementation, right? Checkers, where the king can only move one back, and where backwards captures are not allowed. Designing capture logic, finalizing crowning rules, and completed. So these steps, it came up with by itself. That's a deep search. It can reason its way through these steps and what is needed to build. It's a very open problem, and it also breaks down every step in sub-steps. So this is a very clear analytical approach with a very structured algorithmic design in trying to understand the problem. That is the thing. It's not even designing the solution. In order to design a solution, you need to first understand the actual problem. So a short prompt like this means more analysis of identifying the actual problem. So I gave it a bit of a kind of hint with you need to think about board layout, legal moves, and captures. So it used that in combination with this external source. Designing capture logic. Each capture sequence starts at the piece's position, adding each jump to track the path. If no captures are available, players can make non-capture moves with ordinary pieces moving one square forward and kings moving any distance diagonally. That seems to be correct. It's probably information derived from this source. Now, I'm not going to go through all these steps, but as you can see, this is the actual thinking. This is not the output, so be very careful. This is what it does in its head. So it's like the thinking part, and then it will technically write down the output based on this analysis. So it will give you this huge description of what international drafts is and how it needs to think about in terms of the design. So it gives you key points. Each player starts with 20 pieces on the first 4 rows closest to them, with etc. game overview, international, also known as checkers. This is already ambiguous, so we need to make sure that it understands our version of the game, international drafts, as opposed to the different variation, like for example Canadian drafts, which is 144 fields, or actual American checkers, right? 10 times 10 grid, not the 8 times 8, which is also a different version. That's why I gave him this link, international. The objective is to capture all opponent pieces or block them so they cannot move. Rules of movement, game ends and draws, so how do you achieve a result? And the first Python implementation. As you can see, it has written this code. Yeah. Now, the first thing you can already recognize is that it's pretty short. And then it starts to write this code in Python. And then it says, it just stops here, ... for some reason. So if I copy and paste this, it won't work. So I gave him the additional instruction, write the code. So it did the same thing, key points. And in this case, it wrote even more game logic here. So it needs to clearly write out every single part of the game logic in order to write a correct implementation. So you can see that it even sourced the Wikipedia and was able to filter out the relevant information itself. It discusses board representation, move and capture logic, user interface, and the game loop. The game loop is technically everybody has to take turns until the game ends. That's called a game loop. That's very standard in game design. Different kinds of pieces with the properties, and even it, as a good researcher, it cites the different primary sources. Thought for 2 minutes and 18 seconds. So that is the line of reasoning it had. Okay, now, then the implementation. So technically, then we need to think about how the game is being designed in a technical way once we have defined the game logic. And one of the things is what we call the interface. What do you see on the screen? So we need to represent the board in a certain way with all the different pieces. As you can see, there is an Grok suggests to use W, lowercase, uppercase, and lowercase b as the letters representing the different men and kings, the different pieces. So this suggests that Grok is starting off with what is called a text-based interface. So we don't have any graphics. It will be a text-based or a command line game where you write or interact with the game by giving instructions on the command prompt, as in the old days people did with Microsoft DOS. Okay, now it gives the code implementation, and as I've said before, I'm not going to discuss this. I'm going to just assume that this works, and in order to test that, I'm going to copy this code into my IDE, which can be found right here. This is literally the code that I've copied into a file that I call groktree_id.py, which is groktree international draughts.python. Okay, I'm going to run the code and see what happens. Let's see if this works. Now, hopefully there will be no errors, and this is what we will see in the output. Now, we see a drafts board, so that looks good. We see a very awkward number allocation as almost like a mathematical grid with X and Y axis, and it gives us an interface where it says player white's turn, and we need to choose a move between these different values, 0 to 8. So let's see if we can understand this. We see a grid, like what we learned in the basic algebra class, right? Where we take a coordinate 3, 1. 3, 1. That's a valid coordinate here. And we move that to the coordinate 4, 0, 4, 0. That looks like a diagonal move, so that seems to be correct. Now, for experienced draughts players, we already noticed 2 weird things. First of all, this is not how we write down the moves, as you could have seen in my demo with my game between myself and Cherniak. We use 3228, where every field has an allocated number. The thing is, Grok didn't know that. You might think like, well, it would be able to find that, but there are so many sources online, and the Wikipedia page might not have discussed this clearly. We also didn't write it in our prompt, so it technically comes up with its own solution to have a denotation for the moves. In this case, it's a more mathematical approach, where we just move a piece between different coordinates. So another problem is that the board seems to be the wrong way around, right? The main line is now here from the upper left corner all the way to the lower right corner, which, as we know, if you are a draughts player, is incorrect. The main line should be here from the lower left corner to the upper right corner, and also the 2 parallel lines that you can see here starting at this 8, 0, and then all the way up to here. So these 2 parallel lines here, which we know as the trick-track lines, trick-track, they should run here. Can you blame Grok? Maybe it found conflicting information. There are different versions of the game, so we need to tell him that he needs to do that differently. Let's see if the interface works. Let's choose, for example, this piece here on 3.5 to 4.4. 3.5 to 4.4 is valid, right? 4. Enter. And you can see it updated the board, and it works. This piece looks like a regular draughts moves. So the white piece is here now. Then we respond with black. And it updates the board, as you can see. Now, then it suggests that there's only one move that white can do. So let's see if it interprets the rule correct. 4-4, capture to 6-2. We only get one move. So this is a correct interpretation of the mandatory capture rule. Capture is mandatory. It can only capture in one way. So this is a correct implementation of that game rule. So the game logic seems to be correct. Also, for the black move to capture this white piece, it has 2 different valid captures, which is by choice, of course, and it is valid. So this looks pretty good. 1, and we continue the game, etc., etc. So for a first attempt, Grok did really well. Now, of course, this hurts the eyes for 2 reasons. We are visual people. We use what we call graphical user interfaces for most of our, not only games, but our apps, where we use graphics and icons and pictures and buttons to interact with the mouse. This is a text-based game. And even though it looks okay, of course, in the end, people will not keep on playing this game because it's just too dull. And there's too much math going on to just always identify the coordinates and the moves that you want to play. Yeah. So even though this is a simple version, it runs without errors, and it correctly implemented the game rules. So this is pretty impressive by Grok 3. I have tried this before on ChatGPT and some older models, and it wasn't able to get a working version. So this is already a good start for Grok 3. Right. Okay, so now what? Yeah, what we're going to do now is we're going to return to Grok, and we're going to try to teach it what it did wrong and tell it to improve it. So one of the things that we didn't like was, it also gives you the game instructions here, how to play. So the next prompt is that I told it, okay, we need to change two things. First of all, the issue is with the notation. That just hurts my eyes. I don't want these XY coordinates. So I asked it, and I uploaded a picture of a draughts board with the correct, as you can see, with the correct assigned numbers per field. Yeah. So I said this game works, but there's a few issues. Use the following number system for the moves. For example, white pieces start from the fields 31 to 50, and black moves should be written, and black, so I made a typo here. Even though that is not a big issue, because it can look at this picture and still find out the correct numbers. Move should be written as 32 28, move from 32 to 28, black answers 19.3, captures use X, and technically I explain what I just explained to you guys when I demoed Tunoi base. So I'm just giving that information to Grok to improve its solution. Now, I also said, okay, you got the line wrong. The long line is diagonally 5 to 46 from lower left to upper right. You got this the other way around, fix it. That's all I did. That's all I thought. I told Grok to adjust. So it remembers its previous solution, applies this feedback to its previous solution. So it thinks again, and then it literally tells you to address the issue raising in your query regarding the international draughts. We have made the necessary adjustments to ensure the numbering system aligns with the provided image description and the move notation matches your specification. Below is a complete explanation of the fixes and the updated implementation. Now, if you read this, then it breaks down in depth mathematically if it now understands the correct numbering system of the fields. Yeah? Very clear sentences, which I'm not going to read all of it. Then the move notation, it repeats and it gives examples. Long diagonal correction, so the correct position of the board, and an updated implementation. And here we go again. A large piece of code. Explanation of the fixes, some technical stuff that we are not interested in now, verification. So that's what Grok has feedback. So now, of course, the question is, does this actually work? So let's go back to our interface, where we can copy the code, which is, as you can see, a second file, Grok 3 International Draughts Part 2, the updated version. So the code is here. I literally copied it. I didn't change anything. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this right now. Now you can see that this is still running here, but I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to say run Python file. Now you see that this is returning an error. I'm going to ignore that for now. You can see that now the second solution is ran. And look at this. It now gives you a solution that looks very similar to the previous one, but first of all, it gives you a number board for reference right here. And it will then even gives you the board with the same notation in what we call ASCII, so a text-based interface. But as you can see, it will now suggest you the moves based on the new notation as we have learned it, and to experienced drafts players, we can see that these are all the valid white moves you can start a game with. The prompt will even say, okay, this is how you need to write the actual input. Now look at also the fact that the long line is now in the right position, so to flip the board around. So this looks really good. Let's see, let's do, whoa. The focus was not down here, excuse me. Let's start with 33-29 and challenge this player for a Keller variation, as we call it. Let's see what happens. And as you can see, it correctly moved 33 to 29, and now it says players black turn possible moves. And once again, for experienced drafts players, we can see that these are all valid moves. Now let's play 16-21, and the updated board will once again show the correct position after black's move. White move for now, so that's alternating. I'm going to play 31-26, and the updated board is still correct. Black plays this one. We're still good to go. 11-16. And now black is going to go on the attack with 21-27. And here you can see that the implementation has a game logic mistake. So you can see that the mandatory capture of white here, 32 times 21, but as you can see, the suggested moves just completely ignore that. Not totally, because there is 32-21, but that doesn't have an X. So that's interesting. Now, of course, the solution shouldn't offer any of the regular moves, like 44-39. It should only offer the moves that are actually showing the mandatory capture. Let's see if it understands this. And it does. You can see that this is the correct position. 16 times 27, which is correct. You see? So the game logic seems to work, but the output of the moves is still a problem. Yeah. Nonetheless, this is very, very impressive. Now, of course, you can tweak this further, trying to solve the notation game, but that will not be the goal. I want to move to telling Grok if we can actually make a graphical board, what is called a GUI, graphical user interface. So when we can actually click the pieces and move it, just like we can do in our Tournoi base example. We can literally click on the board and the moves, and it will show the moves physically. So no more manual entering the moves, but actually interactive board using graphics. Now maybe you think like that's a bridge too far, right? Well, we will see that after the short break. So I'll see you guys back on the other side. So far, the text-based interface is very impressive, very decent. All right, guys, and we are back for the last part. What we've seen so far was pretty impressive, what Grok was able to come up with. Also remember that international drafts is a complex game, especially in terms of game logic and rules. Maybe not to a human, you think like, oh, the rules might be simple, but you need to realize like when you want to design this game in a software solution, you need to get all the different rules and logic correct first, unambiguously, in order for a computer to be able to correctly implement the game and the AI to design it in that manner. All right. Okay, so the next step is, as I have announced in the previous part, is to be able to create an actual physical board. So within software development, there are technically two different kinds of interfaces. An interface can be explained as technically that part of the game or the software you interact with on screen. It can be text-based, command line interface, that is what it is called formally, CLI, where you get a prompt, you need to type in your command and hit enter to confirm your input, and then the text output will update the situation or the state of the game, as you could have seen in the first two versions. So now we move to a GUI, a graphical user interface, and within Python that can be done by using a library called Pygame, Python game. How that works is not important. It's technically just being able to use graphic elements in the language of Python, and technically that is not relevant for now. So I'm just going to tell Grok 3 to use the Pygame library. I said, awesome, can you add in a graphical interface using Pygame for international drafts? That's all. So the game logic is already filtered out. It understands the board, the notation, the location of the pieces, the start position of the board, the basic rules, capture loss, promotion of kings, movement of kings, etc. So now it will, and I've been using the think mode to turn on that reasoning now in the previous ones as well. So you can see it thought for 2 minutes and 1 second. So you can open this and it will show you what it has been doing here. So this is technically what takes place in its head. Yeah. So an idea. It's quite extensive, as you can see. This is when you ask a human a question, and this is what is going on in his brain without saying. Look at this. Now, the output itself is then, of course, the result of that thought pattern and the choices that Grok made for this query. Okay, to add a graphical interface to an existing international draws game using Pygame, we need to create a visual representation of the 10x10 board described in the image attachment. Handle user interactions via mouse clicks and integrate the existing game logic. So it got that spot on, right? Now, one thing you need to realize is that handle user interactions via mouse clicks is a very different kind of interaction with the end user. In the previous version, in text-based, we type technically the move in text and hit enter on the keyboard, while now we need to be able to click on a field, and that click needs to be recognized, and then it needs to determine, the game logic needs to determine if there is a piece on that field and if it is a valid move that has been selected by the user. So a to from click event. Now it goes through Pygame. What it does, the library itself has let me call it standard code to make these visual elements. And of course, the way you need to draw that board and then interact with the user's mouse clicks is the most important part. So it spits out the complete Python code. As you can see, it's pretty long. It's a bit longer. Then it explains the way the design was made, code design. So this looks pretty good. You can see Pygame is clearly part of the implementation. Now it starts with import Pygame, and it defines a class international drafts where it initializes the board, get possible moves, find captures. So these names are intuitively tied to the game logic. So even if you have no clue what this code does, the names of what is called methods makes perfect sense. Creating the board here, and then the game loop. As long as we play and the game hasn't ended, run this code. That's what it means. Okay, let's go to the IDE to run this and see if there is actually a drafts board being created and if we can use it. Okay, this is literally a copy paste, didn't change anything, just like in the previous examples. So let's run this. Hopefully with no errors. Hello from the Pygame community, and this is what we will get. We get a standalone window with a correctly defined drafts board saying international drafts and player white's turn. This is very, very impressive. Remember that we only gave a one sentence prompt to Grok 3 and it was able to correctly, and even the color pattern, correctly use the information given and researched to make this drafts board. Okay, this is a correct board, but see if it also actually applies the correct moves. I can click on a piece, and as you can see, it uses color coding to identify what moves are valid. Very impressive. The two from fields are indicated by green and yellow. I didn't say anything about that to Grok in the interface. It decided on its own to technically help out the user in the interface by indicating what possible moves can be made. If I click here, nothing happens. If I click here, nothing happens. Because it's white's turn. So let's play 32-28. Now, I can keep on clicking and you can see it still offers the option for white to play, which is strange, because after 32-28 this should change to black turn. Let's try to move a black piece. Nothing. Black is completely static, while white still has the options to play. So that's an interesting variation. So what is going on here? It seems to have been able to implement the correct move for white with the suggestions using color coding, but what it didn't do correctly is the game logic in terms of whose turn it is and switching or alternating the turn between white and black. So the interface looks really good. I want to keep this. The colors and the pieces look good. The way the moves are implemented looks good with the suggestive colors. But now we need to tell Grok that the taking turns is either not there or wrongly implemented. Okay, let's go back to the drawing board. So our game interface in Pygame looks really good. So what I do is just like a human being, I tell it based on the solution that it offered, works, but only white can move. After white completed a move, black should get the turn and then back to white. Very basic, no details. What does Grok do with this? So once again, it thought for quite a long time, 2 minutes and 17 seconds, and it reasoned itself through this issue. So you can see there's a lot of things going on here. Let me scroll down a little bit. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this. Maybe the start. Piece of yada yada yada. So it repeats some of the things that I already knew. Below is the Python program using Pygame to create a graphical user. The game is a variant of checkers. That's all old news. So it creates a solution here. Let's scroll further. So once again, it gives the explanation, user interaction, and then compliance with query. Only white can move initially. After a white move completes, no further captures, black gets a turn, then back to white, alternating as specified. So it took into account the objections that I had. Okay. Let's go back to this one. And let's see if Grok was able to get it right now. So let's run this thing. Second option, and we will get this. Looks exactly the same. And let's see what is going on now. So that looks good. Black still can move. But as you can see, it didn't solve the problem at all. So let's go back to Grok once again. Now, I left out a version that messed up the configuration of the pieces. So technically it started off with the right board, and then because I asked it to fix the issue that black needs to move, it gave me a completely wrong configuration of pieces. So I asked it to change it again. I didn't incorporate it in the demo. So this is the part that I skipped. So you can see now you've messed up the begin position and piece arrangement. So let's skip this, because that was a bit silly. So it had it right first, and then it changed some of the game logic in the core, in the game loop, but it also for some reason messed up the starting position of the pieces that it got right at first. So that's also something that you need to be mindful of. If you use AI, it can mess up the things it got correct first, because there is an interdependency between the game logic and the part of the code that deals with the initial setup. All right. Okay, so we go scroll to this. So it reverted back to the correct board after I told him that, but still it didn't give me the ability to play a move in terms of alternating turns. So black was still not able to move. So once again, logic. So we were confronted with the same problem, and it fixed the previous problem as well. A lot of thinking. Okay, and let's test the third installment then. So this one. Let's move to see if we can finally get black to move as well. Okay, here we go. And we are back. So white can move. Whoops. You see what is going on here? It crashes right away. Now, as you can see, after white moves, the board disappears and it drops an error message right here. It says name self is not defined. So this is a piece in the code that made a non-existing reference. So what I did is I told him that after I move white, it drops this error. So once again, Grok is going to troubleshoot it. Then it gives me a solution, but I told him I want a complete solution in one script, so I can copy and paste the entire code. So that's what I did right here. So let's return and let's look at the fourth installment. So while fixing the problem for black being able to move, it made a mistake in a reference. So technically it was an error in the code that wasn't there first. Yeah. All right, let's run the fourth one. Let's see if this is gonna work. And here we have the same draughts board, so that looks good. Player white still highlights the white moves and still is unable to play the black moves. So once again, this is a Grok fail. Okay, let's continue. Let's see if we can go down here. Yeah. It still doesn't alternate. So I had to tell Grok now 3 times in a row that it didn't solve the problem. Okay, so it once again it tries to understand the problem, reason, and it spits out this solution. So it explains how it switches turns between current player and the other player. All right, and let's go to that solution here. Run it again. So this is the 5th iteration of the one using Pygame. And we are back, and let's see what this does. This looks much better. So let's use the color variation. You see player B turn, and I can actually play the color variation with the correct captures as well. So this looks really good. Now the majority capture in one turn, so that looks good too. Go back here. And now I might draw the conclusion, well, this is a correct implementation. But unfortunately, there is a problem still. So let me show you that like this. Maybe black plays this one now, and which is a mistake, because white can win with playing this move, which is known as Rotterdammetje, after the city of Rotterdam. Now, if you look at this situation, according to the draughts rules, black is obligated to take 2 pieces. 1, 2. It cannot take this one piece because you need to take the majority capture. So let's try that. You see what it suggests? If I click here, it suggests this one. If I click here, it only suggests moving forward. If I take this one, it suggests... So what is going on here? Well, the first logical error is that this one shouldn't have been offered because there's a mandatory capture. The second is that these 2 are illegal, but you see it captured. So what is going on here? The game logic here didn't account for backwards capture yet. Yeah, that is the problem that we face now. So that's why this part of this solution is only recognizing forward captures, not back captures, even though that was already described in the logic. Yeah. Now the turns are alternating correctly, captures and moves are implemented correctly. However, the backward capture doesn't work. Fix it. Now here we go again. Right. And you can see at this point in time, while I was almost at the end, it said you've reached your limit for 10 Grok things per 24 hours. So that will also conclude our video here. To be continued within 2 days. I'm going to do another full session where we're going to look at if we get the fully working version with Grok within our 10 Grok thinking questions. So I hope you have an idea of how with prompt engineering and a tool like Grok 3 you can build your own software. It requires technical knowledge. You need to be able to use the tools and test the software, but technically by prompt writing you can create your own game. Now this was pretty impressive. I have to say that Grok 3 impressed me a lot, but you can see it's not perfect. You don't write one prompt and think you can get King's Row or Flitz with just one prompt. You need to understand how software is actually built in different parts. So the interface part, the way it interacts with the end user, text-based versus graphic interface, and then you also need to find your way around pinpointing what mistakes the AI makes in terms of implementation, and you need to be patient in order for you to get what you want. The fully working product comes in different stages, as you could have seen. So I realize this is a pretty long video, but it also gives you an idea on how AI is used with these kind of projects, and what the limitations are of even a tool like Grok 3. Yeah. Now, of course, there will be people that say, well, you could have written the prompts more clearly, or you could have given more information. But remember that prompt writing is not the only determinant for success. It's also what can Grok research himself in terms of his internal dialogue, the reasoning model, and the quality of the external sources it finds, and the choices it makes in using what information at what time. Yeah, you could clearly see that, especially the taking turns part was not easy for Grok to solve. It took 3 to 4 iterations. So that's something to keep in mind. I hope this was an interesting demo, and part 2 will follow soon. And of course, at the end of part 2, we will hopefully have a working drafts implementation, fully written and designed by Grok 3.0. And then I think we need to challenge Elon Musk for a game of drafts as well. Okay, guys, this was SaxSQL. I will see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching. Check my other videos to master your data.